Welcome to the Empowered Birth series, where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your true natural birth. And today we're going to talk about more ways that you can plan and get your empowered birth. But we're not going to go into the details of the actual natural birth plan that you're creating or anything medical. Instead, we're going to be focusing a little bit more holistic minded. Because number 12 on our list of 26 things you need to know if this is your first time planning a true natural birth is that you need to plan your birth even more meticulously than in planning a wedding. You know, we have about a 50 to 60% divorce rate, and nothing is guaranteed in life. But you know what is guaranteed? Giving birth. You are most definitely going to be giving birth, one way or another. The wedding industry is like a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they do everything they can to convince you that you need to spend as much as it probably takes to get a mortgage on your dream day, your most special day. But then, in the same breath, we're told not to plan our births this way. We're told to skimp on spending money on services that truly matter. Go back and watch one of my other videos where I talk about the consumer-based mindset and how you really don't need to be spending a lot of money on the baby gadgets or the nursery or any of those other kind of the things that you're told that are important. But really, as a seasoned mom, I can tell you they are not. They really are not. And you know what? Planning your wedding, while it might seem like the most important thing that you can do, no, no. In fact, I'm really grateful that I never actually married my former partner. We had actually been engaged before I got pregnant, so we were planning a wedding. And then what happened is I found out I was pregnant with my son, and I just saw all the work that was being put into this wedding, and it wasn't interesting to me. I couldn't really wrap my head around it. It's like, you know what's more important to plan? The birth of my baby. So I put all of the resources and all the time and energy into planning the birth of my baby. And it turns out that was the better bet because now I left my ex and I still have my children and I have their birth experiences. So recognizing that while your marriage may not last or other people's marriages may not last, but yours might last, still you can always go back and you can have another party, even if your first wedding was little to be desired, even if you eloped, even if maybe you didn't have all of the money and time to be able to invest in it the way you wanted, you can always go back and you can renew your vows. What you can't do is you can't go back and rebirth your baby. You can go have a second, you can have a third child, you can have a fourth, you could even have a fifth. But it's never going to be that same birth experience with the current baby that you're pregnant with now or planning to become pregnant with. So I'm just going to tell you, it is critical that you plan your birth and treat it as the most important day in your life, even more important than your wedding day. So what does that look like? If we really took the wedding planning steps that we typically have to focus on and applied it to birth, what are we really looking at? Okay, so the first thing you want to do, and this is what I tell all of my clients to do, is you want to create your birth vision. Now, you can go and get my Empowered Birth Toolkit. Go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/toolkit, and this will help you get more of an idea of what you want to do and how to plan your birth. Sometimes I have the Write Your Empowered Birth Plan template inside of that gives you the overview of how to create your birth vision. But if it's not currently inside the toolkit, there's so many other goodies inside of it, including a birth advocacy report. I sometimes put modules from my program, Your Empowered Birth Academy, which is the paid version of all of my information, but I don't charge for information. Information is basically free. Even if something is not currently available inside of the Empowered Birth Toolkit, if you are a subscriber and you choose to take action, then all you ever have to do is email me at hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com and tell me that you would like to have access, and I'll give it to you. Because what you really pay for is access to me. I help you through your empowered birth using my own genius to basically say, okay, here's the problem you have. Here's how I can pinpoint what you need to do to get out of it. Let's get you out of your fear. I go through your own unique personality, your values, your circumstances, and then take the empowered birth method and apply it directly to you so you get help. But outside of that, yes, information is completely free. So if you want to have an empowered birth, all you have to do is continue to follow these videos, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you go and get the Empowered Birth Toolkit, get the freebies off my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com, and you're pretty much set. You can do it yourself. But otherwise, if you would like some faster help, if you'd like some support, then that's where I have some other paths. You can go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide to learn more about that. Okay, so you create your birth vision and you're dreaming of your ideal birth. And if you would like some ideas on that, then I highly recommend that you check out this book, Natural Hospital Birth by Cynthia Gabriel, where she goes into a whole chapter on creating the vision for your birth and imagining different scenarios. But outside of that, there are 3 specific things that you need to look at. And number 1 on the list is, who are you hiring on your team? When you're planning a wedding, you typically have either bridesmaids or you enlist your mother. Sometimes you might even enlist your mother-in-law if you have a good relationship. You enlist the help of your best friend, your maid of honor. You also might hire a wedding planner to help you. But ultimately, this is between you and your partner, and then you bring in additional support to help you plan this beautiful wedding day, right? Well, what if you do the same thing for birth? Typically, we go in and we're just trying to follow the experts. But imagine if you were doing this with a wedding. And sometimes people do that. You have an idea of what you want for your wedding, and your mother-in-law decides that she wants things to go one way, and your mother is fighting and wanting things to go another way. And maybe your sister has some opinions. Maybe even your best friend has some opinions. Maybe the wedding planner isn't listening to you. But typically, if you're hiring the wedding planner, you want the wedding planner to see your vision. You don't want it commandeered by your mother-in-law or your mother, right? So imagine if you hired a wedding planner and you had a perfect idea of what you wanted for your wedding. And then all of a sudden, the wedding planner is telling you how that's not going to work, how you can't do that, how that's ridiculous, and how you should just do what they recommend, and they give you a whole package of what they typically do. And you're supposed to just take that package. Well, that's what happens when you hire the wrong care provider. The other thing is, if you're hiring the wrong doula, they have their own agenda sometimes. Go back and watch some of my other videos on how to hire your care provider or how to hire your doula so that you know more about that. Okay, so you're picking your team very, very carefully, recognizing that your partner might also have some ideas when it comes to your birth, just like they probably had some ideas when it came to the wedding. Or they might have been completely hands off and been like, no, you just plan it and I'll just show up. In which case you have to ask yourself, how invested are they really? Because if they're trying to have you do all of the mental load, that might not really work in the case of birth. You need your partner to be 100% on board and be your strongest advocate, because the medical system can and will use their fear against them. So this is not frivolous like a wedding. So your partner can't just shrug it all off and say, you take all the responsibility. No, they have a role this time. That's more important than just showing up. So go back and watch some of my other videos where I talk about what your partner needs to do to really support you and how to advocate for you. Again, you just go into the playlist of my YouTube channel, where you can basically go through and find all of these mini masterclasses, and the video is in there. If you need any help, you can always reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. Either myself or someone on my team will happily direct you to that video. Okay, so The next thing you really need to focus on in terms of who you're hiring on your team is certain qualities. And again, you can go deeper into this by watching some of the other videos on how to hire your care provider, how to hire your doula, and how to communicate with your partner. But you're really asking yourself 3 questions. Number 1, who do I want around me who's going to enhance this experience and help me feel safe? Obviously, you really want your partner to be there if they make you feel safe. If they make you feel nervous and uncomfortable, you might want to question that a little bit more. And you might have a category 5 partner, in which case you might want to check out some of my other videos or reach out to me privately, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com or carly@empoweringmomsbirth.com, because I know how to get out of that. Okay. If you're in that situation, I just want to let you know that that help is available. If you don't feel comfortable giving birth with your partner in the room, that is an indicator you don't feel safe around your partner. And it's okay to not have them in the room. Just going to say that. Second thing you want to know is like, who's going to enhance the experience? Who's going to help me feel safe? Well, who's going to make you feel really uncomfortable? Who's going to make you feel like you just can't? People keep saying you need to have this person in the room, and you're like, no, that freaks me out. And it's okay if you even say, having nurses hovering over me freaks me out. Having a doctor in the room freaks me out. Having a male doctor in the room freaks me out. I really would rather have a female doctor or a midwife rather than a male doctor. You are totally justified in feeling that way. Completely justified. You're validated in this. It's okay. You do not need to make yourself more okay with something that you're not okay with. Because birth is such a physiological process. It's such a personal journey. It's like having an orgasm. If you wouldn't feel comfortable having sex in front of this person, you probably can't birth with them in the room. So this is again why when you're aiming for a true natural birth, you really need to set that up to be like, who am I going to feel most comfortable around? And I can be myself and I can do my movements and I can vocalize as I need to and I can do my thing versus who are you not going to feel comfortable with? The other thing is once you understand who you're comfortable with, you need to be looking at their skill set. Can they anticipate actual challenges? There's a lot of really great doulas and midwives out there, but if they aren't also looking on the side of what can go wrong and not just in the birth itself, but within the environment, they're not right for you. There's a lot of really amazing doulas that love physiological birth. They love natural birth. They love to support it. And at the same time, they don't see the trauma and the abuse that happens in the hospital system because they mostly attend home births. So if you hire that doula and then you decide to go into a medical system that they don't really know how to navigate, they are not going to be able to help you. So you need to be very clear on what your environment is like, more on that in a minute. And then also, are they able to basically anticipate the challenges? So with my clients, they usually come to me and they want to have a hands-off birth and they want to do it at home. And I am aware of certain limitations to that. I'm aware of certain challenges that might come up, such as if the care provider gets wind of them not coming in for appointments, what that can look like. And I say, hey, just to let you know, even if you choose to duck these appointments, you might get bombarded with phone calls. They might try to scare you. They might try to get you to come in, and they might come up with every single excuse they can think of to get you to come in. So I'm just letting you know that this is what can happen. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying this is what can happen. And we're not going to be afraid of that. Instead, we're going to create a plan around that. Typically, the plan is, well, I'm just going to field those calls to my partner because my partner is very much like, stop calling. And then it's like, they have that protection. And then if they absolutely really need to get on that call to show that it's not an abusive situation, then there's scripts that I give them to use. And it's like, here, this is what you can say. This is how you can say what you want. And, sometimes they send people right to the house. Well, what are you going to do in that situation? Like, you need to be able to plan far ahead and anticipate just how much this medical system might do something. And sometimes it's just protocol. Sometimes there's fears. Sometimes there are bad things that happened in the past with other people where they were being barred from medical care and they were being controlled. So you have to look at it from that lens as well. So being able to anticipate those challenges and then also being able to make it happen. Being able to be like, okay, here's the challenge, but we're not going to run away from that. Instead, this is what we're going to do instead. Kind of like the wedding planner who has seen so many high-strung mother-in-laws who are trying to control it. And if you said to them, hey, just so you know, my mother-in-law is really high-strung and she tries to control absolutely everything, and I'm really scared that she's going to ruin my big day. And the wedding planner is like, oh, don't worry about that. I can totally handle any mother-in-law. And then number 3 on this is asking, well, can you give me some situations in which you were able to handle that challenge? So, like in the case of the wedding planner, it's like, oh, don't worry about that mother-in-law. I was able to handle this situation. It was really a big mess. And she tried to even wear white to the wedding. And she tried to invite her daughters to be all bridesmaids. And she was trying to run things. And I was able to do this, 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 and this. And then I was able to make it all nice and smooth so that she didn't mess up that day at all. So it's the same thing with the birth. It's like, oh, don't worry. If that doctor calls and calls and calls, this is what I did for another client. And this is how we can kind of do some damage control so that you don't have to worry about it. We've got this. How much more confident do you feel knowing that somebody's got your back? So this is what you really want to look for when it comes to hiring those on your team to be able to handle those challenges, because your most important job is birthing your baby. You do not need to be thinking about the logistics or trying to do damage control when you're in labor. And your partner needs to be able to support you and not have to do all of the damage control. But if they do a little bit of damage control, they still have to know that you've got this. There still needs to be someone on your team. So this is why I also recommend, if you're planning a true natural birth, please hire a doula and hire one that's actually going to advocate for you. Hire one that's a little bit sassy and doesn't fear getting in trouble, because those are the ones that are really going to go to bat for you. Don't just hire just anybody for your birth, because again, this is more important than your wedding day. This is more important than hiring a wedding planner, is hiring somebody that's going to help you with your birth. So the next thing you need to know is your venue. What do you want that space to look like? Whether it's home or hospital or at a birth center is irrelevant. When you're imagining that space, you want to be evoking a feeling. You want the most peaceful environment possible. This is where we call in things like the tea lights, and maybe we have some essential oils for some scents that you want. Maybe this is when you have your affirmations. Some moms like to post those affirmations all around the room so they can look at them. Some moms like visuals. Some moms like to be in the complete darkness. Some moms even want nobody else in the room. And that is perfectly okay. You can have everybody stand outside of your room, especially if you're having a home birth, which honestly, one of the best things about my home birth with my daughter was I got so fed up with everybody, I sent them home. And that was when I was having the most peaceful labor. When my partner suddenly said, hey, can I go to the liquor store? And I was suddenly all by myself with my son sleeping in the other room. That's when I was at my most peaceful. I also had the mother of all contractions, and then my baby was born right after that. However, it was still like, oh, I actually like this. I actually like being in my own element and not having anybody around. So when you're looking at that venue, it's also things like elements of water. Even if you don't plan to have a water birth, do you want to hear the sound of water? Do you want to hear the sound of a waterfall, ocean waves? What is it? Maybe it's the rain. Maybe you like to hear the sound of the rain. Maybe it's the rainforest. Maybe it's something else. But what sounds do you really want to hear that are going to help evoke that feeling of peace? And the other part is the practical elements. The birth ball, the peanut ball. If you want to have a rope that you can pull from the ceiling, some moms really appreciate being able to pull something. Maybe it's that you want to have one of those birthing chairs. Maybe you do want a pool. Maybe you would also like to be able to have a TENS unit. Whatever it is that you're adding those practical elements, and they don't just have to be birth related, you can also be thinking about the kinds of foods that you want to have. Typically, I like cut up tiny pieces of fruit that are frozen because that allowed me to have a little bit of sustenance and also give me that coldness that I needed. But you don't have to do that. You can choose anything that you want in your birth. This is your birth setting. It's as important as your wedding day. It's actually more important than your wedding day. So when you're looking at the venue, you're also looking at the menu, right? And you're looking at the different little decorations and the table settings and how you've got the centerpieces. Well, the same thing with your birth. What decorations are you bringing in? What food are you bringing in? What does that environment look like? You can take any space, any empty space, and transform it. So if you're taking an empty space, an empty room, what is that going to look like? And of course, you can also have your doula help you with this. Doulas are great for setting up a space, even when you get to the hospital. They just put it all out there. But if you're having a home birth, the advantage is you can set that space up days or even weeks in advance, depending on how you want to use that space and what else you use that space for. So when I was planning my home birth with my daughter, I knew that the pool was basically going in our dining room. So I had moved our kitchen table out and I had that in the living room. And then I set up my desk and my computer and everything on top of that. So because I couldn't get to my computer desk, I moved my computer onto the kitchen table. Then what I did is I left that space open and then I cleaned it all up in advance. So the kids realized, oh, there's nothing here but my bookshelf. There's no toys in this area. It was very clean. And then I started setting up other things as well. I started setting up little partitioned curtained areas. So I put sheets up on the entrances towards the living room so that it would be completely blocked off. So that when people came through the front door, they'd actually have to pull back a curtain in order to get into the space. And then what I did is I had little tiny Christmas lights stringing around. So you can really set up a really nice space. And some of my moms have done this in their bedrooms, and others do it in their kitchen or their living room. It just depends on what your space looks like. So if you are having a home birth, that is an advantage in how you can set up your venue days and days in advance or even weeks in advance. Finally, we have the guest list. And I kind of already hinted about that when I was talking about your birth team earlier and how you really need to be thinking about who you're going to have in your space. But this doesn't just translate to labor or birth. This also comes into postpartum because you know what? There's nothing more frustrating as a new mom or even as a seasoned mom. You've just had a baby. You're riding on the highs of oxytocin. You're working with breastfeeding. You're dealing with sleepless nights sometimes, especially if you've had a surge of adrenaline and you can't sleep. And suddenly everybody wants to come see the baby. You know what I'm talking about. So you need to ask yourself the same three questions that I said before. Number one, who is going to enhance the experience? Who are those people that you can't wait to have around you to support you? And who are the ones that are like, oh, I want to help. And you're like, great, great. Yeah, Yeah, that sounds can I get back to you on that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I get that you want to come stay with me for 2 weeks. Yeah. Oh, well, okay. I hear what you're saying, and at the same time, um, yeah, I'll have to talk it over. I need to look some stuff up, but yeah, sure. Okay. And then you immediately get up onto the mom groups and you're like, oh my gosh, my mother-in-law or my sister or whoever wants to come stay with me for 2 weeks and I just can't even. I'm freaking out now. How do I say no to them? Well, I mean, you say no, and there's ways to do that. And you don't actually need to be obligated to have anybody in your space you don't want. So there's those people that you know are just going to make things worse. And then there's the ones that don't even have a right to be in that space in the first place. So in my case, during my first birth, I didn't know a lot about my real situation. I had basically been gaslit for 4 years into thinking that this was normal for the family to all come to the hospital while I was in labor and immediately come into the room after the baby was born. Now, I didn't want this. However, my partner had called everybody while I was in labor, unbeknownst to me, and they all decided to show up at the hospital and they were all in the waiting room. And as soon as I'd had my baby, my partner's like, by the way, my family's all outside and they want to come in. So you need to quickly put something on and like be decent so that they can see the baby. It was like, it was 11 o'clock at night. And I'm now moving over to the couch to do this. So this is why I say, if there's people that you don't want in your space, I'm going to give you some tips as well to keep them out of your space. So just stay to the end of this story. So everybody wanted to see the baby, and I'm like just sitting there, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, I didn't even get some time to really rest. I just had to get out of that bed and I had to be presentable. And then the next day, this is where it's like people don't need to be in your space. I'm sitting there on the couch, breastfeeding my new baby. And my father-in-law, who happened to live with us downstairs, like he lived downstairs and we had the upstairs at the time. It was a whole big thing. Um, he's then like, oh, the neighbors just found out that you had a new baby and they want to come over and see the baby. So then the neighbors all come over and they want to see the baby the day after I get back from the hospital. Like I get home from the hospital and suddenly there's new people in my space. I'm an introvert. And I had to sit there and I had to be happy. I mean, it was great that they wanted to share in that with me. And also, it was very overwhelming. But everybody wants to see a fresh new baby, right? Boundaries are your friend. Empowered mom, I am a very, very firm believer now in boundaries. After having been a people pleaser, I am now reformed. I'm a reformed people pleaser. I know how to say no. And I started practicing this, and this is where this comes in. I started practicing this with my second. I decided I didn't want a baby shower. The last time I had a baby shower, it was just all about everybody else. And it was overwhelming. And it just kept going for hours and hours. And I'm like, I just want to go and take a nap. And there's still people here, and I have to play hostess. So if you don't want a baby shower or you want a small shower or your mother-in-law is trying to plan a shower, you can be like, you can plan it. I'm going to show up when I want, and then I'm going to go home when I want because I'm tired. And then you can give me the gifts after. But like, no, I don't actually want that. Because sometimes people will try to impose things on you, and you can be like, you know what? If you want to do that, if you want to be the star, go ahead. However, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be the hostess. I'm just going to show up and I'm going to leave and I'm just going to do my thing. And I don't like let people know that I'm tired and I will politely disengage. But no, I'm not going to be your little performing monkey. And then the other thing is like after the baby's born, your baby does not need to be a little performing monkey. You do not need to be a little performing monkey. You just had a baby. You deserve to block that off. So, how do you keep people out of your space that are not invited? How do you stop them from crashing your birth or crashing your postpartum like the wedding crashers or those really overbearing in-laws that try to invite everybody on their side of the family, or even your own family is like, oh, you have to invite cousin Fred or cousin Myrtle or whatever. And it's like, I've never even met this person. It's like, well, they're like the third cousin twice removed, but if you don't invite them and it's a slight to the family or whatever. And I'm like, I don't care about any of that. I'm going to invite who I want to invite. And if people are left off the guest list, like I don't care. Like this is another reason I didn't plan a wedding. Thank goodness I didn't. But it was because everybody else had opinions about who needed to be on that guest list. You don't want that for your birth. As an empowered mom, you are a cycle breaker. You are creating a new legacy with the birth of this baby. Even if you already have other children, you can start over in a new legacy and a new way of being within your family. Your dynamic is changing. So even though I was a people pleaser with my first and was just starting to learn boundaries with my son to be able to be like, no, we're not doing that. No, that's going to cause frustration for me. By the time I was pregnant with my second, oh, you better believe those boundaries were already forming big time. I would not let anybody tell me how to birth. I would not let anybody put any horror stories on me. I did not even tell anybody my real due date. And I highly, highly suggest that you do this too. So they asked me what my due date was. People kept asking, and I said April. And then they asked me, well, the exact date. And I said April 12th. My due date was actually March 29th. So if you tell someone that your due date is at least a month away from where it really is, they're not going to be bombarding you with the have you had the baby stuff, right? Exactly. The next thing, after not telling them your due date so that they can't plan to be available around that time to go and bug you during your labor or bug you right after the baby is born, don't announce when you go into labor or when you suspect you're going into labor. Let that be a surprise too. In fact, my own mother called me while I was in the middle of labor, and I just calmly told her between contractions, like I was still early enough in, I was just calmly saying through text mostly. And then she tried to call me and I picked up. So basically what happened is I texted her and she was very high strung and asking me things. And I mean, I get it. My mom was worried about me. Of course she is. She loves me. At the same time, it was really annoying because I didn't need that. I needed to be left alone. The only one who really knew I was in labor was my stepsister, and that was because I was babysitting her kids. So she needed to know that she wouldn't have a sitter for the next few days. That was all that she needed to know. But as for my mother and everybody else around me, no, they didn't need to know. And so she called my partner and she was like, I need to talk to her. When he came home from taking our son to swimming lessons, he's like, you need to call your mother. And I'm like, fine. So I had a quick conversation with her. I'm like, look, we're okay. I'm okay. I just need some peace and quiet. So please don't call. And she's like, okay. So then I was done. And then I went back into my labor process. So understanding that you don't actually have any obligation to tell anybody that you are in labor unless it is going to directly affect them in terms of you doing childcare or something else for them. And even then, you can make up an excuse and just say, hey, I'm not feeling well. And then leave it at that. Just don't tell them. Everybody found out that my baby was born on Facebook several hours after she'd been born. I put it out the next morning, sometime around, I think it was 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'd had her at like 11 something at night, 11:38 at night. So I waited, and then I just put a picture of her on my bed. And I said, look who I got to wake up next to today. And that was it. That was the announcement. So in order for this to work, though, you also have to tell your partner, do not tell anybody that I'm in labor. Do not announce it on Facebook. Do not post any pictures. I will make the announcement. Finally, the last thing with postpartum, after they've already found out you've had the baby. Oh, now they want to see the baby, right? Well, after you've officially made that announcement, and you don't even have to make that announcement the next day, you can make it a couple of days later. You can really enjoy your time. Then you also set it up to say, look, we have certain people that we are inviting in. If you're on the guest list, you already know. Everyone else, we appreciate you. We know that you want to see the baby, and we will let you know when we're ready to have more visitors. And if you would like to be on that guest list, please put your name down below on this comment thing. It kind of gets people to be accountable. You can also do what a lot of moms do now, which is have a list of things. And I tell my clients the same thing. It's like, if you're going to have visitors, put them to work. One of my friends had reached out to me and she said, hey, Carly, I would really love to see the baby. I promise I won't stay long. I have some baby stuff for you that my kids have outgrown, both like for your son and also some really cute baby stuff that I picked up for your daughter. And I'm also bringing you a double chocolate chip frappuccino if you want it. Would you be open to having a visit? And I'm like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, you're totally coming in. So then an hour later, she came with my frappuccino. She came with the baby stuff. She was really calm and she helped around the house a little bit before she left because she had 3 kids and she knew what it was like. And she was like, I just appreciated that so much. So you need to recognize there are people out there that who is going to enhance your experience? Who is actually going to do things for you? Who is going to come in and do the laundry, do the cooking, do some cleaning, maybe bring you some meals, maybe bring you some stuff that you need and run your errands or take your kids out? Who's going to enhance that? And who's going to just show up and hold the baby and make it all about them and want pictures and get upset if you're not playing perfect hostess. And again, they want it all about them and holding the baby. And then they get upset because you won't let them give a bottle. And they're a pain in the ass. Who are those people that you're like, okay, I know that at some point, because they're family and because they're close enough family, that visit is going to need to happen, and I'm going to make it happen on my terms, and then make it happen on your terms. In fact, there was somebody that I did not allow to come in, and it actually put a little bit of a rift with my family for a while. But I'm like, look, this person can't come in. I'm sorry, but they don't behave themselves. And the last time they came in, there was this whole big thing, and I don't want that repeated. And if that's what's going to happen, no, I'm not going to just put up with it. Now, the thing is that I probably did it in a way that was not as empowered as I do now. And if you do have questions on how to deal with certain people in your family dynamic who are tied to others that you really do want to see, all you have to do is reach out. And then, of course, the last group that don't have any business being in your space in the first place, forget it. You don't have to have them there. You really don't. You don't have to entertain that at all. And you don't have to tell them that you had the baby. You don't have to tell them that you went into labor. You don't have to tell them that you're even pregnant. They can find out about it later. Preferably when your child is like 5 or 6 and has boundaries and says, "Who is this annoying person?" And then you can just be like, "Oh, well, this is your Uncle Frank." And yeah, okay. And then they get all offended and you're like, "Well, they didn't see you." And then you just do your thing. Okay? So, that is what I have for you today. Let's just recap quickly on what you need to do when you're planning your birth, like your wedding day. Number 1, hiring your team, treating it like it's more important than hiring a wedding planner. Your doula, your care provider, your partner are the members of your team, but most specifically, a doula can help you anticipate challenges within the medical system and also within your own family dynamic. They might even be able to run interference for you to help you avoid that whole mother-in-law drama. If you and your partner are like, "Hey, we just wanted to let you know there's a chance that this person is going to try to show up at the hospital," your doula and your care provider and even your nurse can run interference on that person. They do that. So you don't have to worry if that person decides to show up anyway. But again, if you follow the tips I gave you about not inviting people to your birth, if you don't tell them your proper due date and you don't tell them you're in labor, they can't show up, right? Exactly. So then the next one, of course, is your venue. You want to be able to think about the environment that you're in, not just the practical elements, but also thinking about how you want that space to feel. And the third thing is your guest list. Who is welcome in your space because they're going to enhance that experience for you? Who is going to make things worse? And who doesn't need to be there at all? And set those boundaries, because as an empowered mom, you are really showing your children from birth what healthy boundaries really look like. And if you have strong boundaries, your kids will have strong boundaries. They will be less likely to be taken advantage of. They will be less likely to do things out of obligation or fear of being in trouble. And they will be more likely to be leaders in the world who create their own luck and create their own opportunities and don't let anybody tell them what they are allowed to do. And then what they do is they go on to create more value in the world, and they are truly, fully, authentically themselves. And that's really what we want, isn't it? We don't want another generation of mommy martyr. We don't want another generation of people who think that they can just walk all over us. We don't want another generation of people who do things out of obligation, not because they really want to. We can heal our toxic family dynamics simply by becoming mothers and doing differently than our families did. And if you do have those toxic family patterns, I'm just going to let you know that I know a lot about that. And a lot of the Empowered Birth Method tips and tools that I give you inside of the Empowered Birth Toolkit and your Empowered Birth Academy also transfer over into other areas of your life. Because when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life. Nobody can take your power away from you ever again. And then you teach your children a better way. So if you want those tips, all you have to do is go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and you can go through the whole overview and understand the empowered birth method and how it works and how to apply it. You can also learn about the 3 paths to working with me: the do it yourself, the self study, or the premium coaching. And you can also basically get the entire overview of what's available at empoweringmomsbirth.com. Make sure you also like, share, and subscribe to this channel, because I'm going deeper into everything you need to do to plan and get your true empowered natural birth and set those boundaries and avoid mommy martyr syndrome. So just keep watching, pay it forward, and together we can empower moms for the future. Thank you so much for watching. Happy empowered birth journey, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye now.